Hello and welcome to the video tutorial on complex sentences at the middle and high school level. Let's start with the definition. A complex sentence contains one independent clause and one or more subordinate clauses. In other words, we're basically looking at a simple sentence being combined with an adjective clause, an adverb clause, a noun clause, or any combination of those types of subordinate clauses. We're going to go through a quick review of the subordinate clauses that we've covered in other lessons, but if you are not familiar with adjective, adverb, or noun clauses, I would suggest looking at one of my other video tutorials or finding some other video tutorial to help refresh your memory. So let's review. Adjective clauses are those types of clauses that begin with a relative pronoun or relative adverb. We have a sentence here: students who need help with clauses should watch the video tutorials online. We have our example of an adjective clause labeled there, beginning with a relative pronoun. Adverb clauses are those types of subordinate clauses in sentences that begin with a subordinating conjunction. For example, since the guests were in costume, I could not recognize many of the people there. Adverb clauses, like adjective clauses, we've done other tutorials on, so if you are not familiar with those types of subordinate clauses, I would encourage you to refresh your memory. And finally, noun clauses. Those are the types of clauses in sentences that are acting as any of the types of nouns. For example, our neighbor has written an article about how she was elected to the Senate. Here we have the three types of subordinate clauses and an example of each one. Again, I've got some tutorials online if you'd like to refresh your memory on any of those types of clauses. We're going to move on and look at some examples of some complex sentences. So I would pause the presentation here and get these sentences copied down. Alright, welcome back. So what we're going to be doing is looking at each of these sentences. The first thing we're going to be looking at is trying to identify the independent clause, or the simple part of the sentence. And again, that relies on our ability to find the subject and verb first, and then we will look for one of the types of subordinate clauses. Let's get started. In sentence A, I am reading a short story about a boy whose parents were killed in a car accident. As always, we always look for the subject and verb first. So in sentence A, our subject is I, the verb is am reading. That is my simple sentence. Our eyes should be able to recognize that there are other subjects and verbs in there, and that would indicate a subordinate clause as well, because there are no compound elements here. So here we have parents were killed. Here's my relative pronoun, which indicates a subordinate clause there. So for the sake of this sentence, I have an independent clause plus a subordinate clause, which equals a complex sentence. In sentence B, because I did not complete my homework, I was not prepared for the pop quiz today. My subject is I. My verb is was. I should recognize that there are other subjects and verbs in that sentence as well. But again, there is no compound element with the conjunction there, so the subject is I did complete. And then I'm looking for the relative pronoun, relative adverb. In this sentence, I have a subordinating conjunction, which indicates an adverb clause. So I have an independent clause plus a subordinate clause, which again equals a complex sentence. And finally, sentence C. While they waited on the tarmac, the passengers were told why the flight was delayed. This is a more challenging sentence, but essentially we need to be able to find the subject and the verb of the independent clause, or the simple part of the sentence. In this case, the subject is passengers, the verb is were told. And again, our eyes will recognize that there are subjects and verbs in the sentence that are not essential. No compound element there. Here we have the subject they, the verb waited. We also have flight, and the verb was delayed. Because we have a subordinating conjunction here, we have an introductory word here for the adverb clause, the noun clause. We have one adverb clause and one noun clause. So essentially we have an independent clause plus two subordinate clauses. Again, that makes a complex sentence. If this is confusing to you, I would encourage you again to go back and brush up or refresh on different types of subordinate clauses. On the next screen, I'm going to give you two sentences from literature. They're examples of complex sentences in two stories you may have read, and I'm going to let you practice on your own. So go ahead and copy these sentences down and see if you can identify the complex elements of these sentences. Okay, let's see how you guys did. Sentence A, Mrs. Tanner and I looked for what she called a restroom. We have our independent clause labeled there in pink. We have our clue word here that's indicating a noun clause acting as an object of the preposition. In sentence B, I had no fear that he would leave any compromising documents or memoranda behind. You can see I had is the subject in the independent clause. He would leave is the subject and verb in the subordinate clause. Again, here's our clue word, that relative pronoun beginning an adjective clause. Sentence C from Life of Pi is probably the most tricky sentence because you have your subordinate clauses set off by commas, but there are two subordinate clauses there, and actually one of them is called an elliptical clause. If you've not heard of elliptical clauses, again, check out one of the other tutorials. So there you go. That's our lesson on complex sentences. Here is our clue word for sentence C. The elliptical clause actually begins right there, but the clue word is missing there or hidden, so that earns it its title as an elliptical clause. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I will see you tomorrow morning.